All right. So 63 is the Great Depression, its causes and effects. We would like you to focus on what the impact of the Great Depression was. The next two lessons, the focus is the impact of the Great Depression. So first, we're going to give you some context and talk a little bit about the causes of the Great Depression. First thing we want to talk about with respect to the causes is the stock market crash. In October of 1929, the market saw its greatest drop in value. What happened was people began to get a little nervous about the economy, get a little nervous about the market, and they started to sell their stock. And as they started to sell, more and more people felt that kind of fear, and they also began to sell. Well, when everyone's selling, the prices are going to fall. And that's exactly what happened. And that's what really creates the collapse of the stock market. Prices fell. People were trying to sell more and more, get in the market to sell their stock, and the prices kept on falling. High tariffs. These tariffs were meant to protect American businesses. What they did, though, was slow down international trade. So now we have a surplus of products out there, and as a result, we can't sell them anywhere except at home. And with the economy slowing down and people not purchasing as much, the economy gets worse off, not better. So these tariffs really kind of put a wall around the United States and a wall around Europe as well. And as international markets froze up, so did domestic markets. One of the biggest problems was the lack of demand, right? That when the stock market crashed and trade slowed and people were losing their jobs, they didn't demand products anymore. They couldn't go out there and buy things. The demand started to fall off, and this, as a result, if people are purchasing less, there's no need to make stuff. And as a result, less workers are needed. So now more people are laid off. They don't demand as much, and you have this kind of falling off of the entire economy. That's the dangers we're talking about with respect to the coronavirus lockdown, right? As people stop buying, why have workers working? So as demand falls off, the economy also falls off. You have to figure out a way to increase demand for products so that people begin to start working again. And then the last cause that we're going to concentrate on is an environmental cause. There was a series of droughts and overproduction in the West on farmland. This led to what becomes known as the Dust Bowl, and thousands of American farmers lose their home and are homeless. So what we're going to do now is take a look at some of those pictures of the Dust Bowl. So here you can see how the land has been turned into almost like a desert in a sense, right? Great picture there. Unbelievable. That's a dust storm in the background. And this family trying to survive out here. You're not going to grow crops out there. Boy covering his face in the dust storm. Once great farmland, now a desert. So this is the areas that were affected by this drought, this erosion, these storms. You can see where the severe spots are the orange, right? And the yellow is the slight erosion. But this forced thousands of people to leave because they had debts. They couldn't grow crops. They couldn't sell crops they couldn't grow. They couldn't pay off their debts. And now they're going to lose their farms and they're going to be out on the road homeless. So they begin to move out of these areas. And you can see many, many people started moving westward to California, all right, where there was a promise of jobs and a future, I guess. Okay, so you have this mass migration from these areas due to this environmental disaster. Here's a person on the road, dust storm behind them, getting out of there. People packed up all their belongings on their cars and their family members, and they headed west. Here's a family in California. All right, reduced to this is what they have. In a tent, lean-to in California, picking crops for a little bit of money to survive. A very famous photographer took this picture, Dorothea Lange, of the migrant mother. You know, just looking at her face and thinking about all the things that she might be thinking about at this time. The anxiety, the stress, the pressure. All right, trying to provide her family on the road. Trying to figure out what to eat, how to get food, things like that. All right. Effects of the Great Depression. First thing, there's a run on the banks. As soon as the economy starts to slow down, people say, hey, I want to get my savings out of the bank. And they rush to the bank. The bank only has a certain amount of deposits on hand. And once the bank runs out of deposits, the bank is shuttered and closes. And all these people lose their money. Thousands of banks failed. Thousands upon thousands of people lost everything they had saved. Remember, banks take your money and they invest in the stock market. When the stock market crashed, banks went out of business and people couldn't get their money. At this time, bank deposits were not insured. So if you had your money in a bank and the bank collapsed, you lost it all. Business fails, right? Here's an old coffee shop and I guess diner kind of thing, and it's out of business. There's an unemployed guy standing on the side of it. So as demand fell off, prices and production fell, factories will close, and if a factory closes, the coffee shop across the street from the factory also has to close. So you have this kind of cycling downward of the economy. Unemployment. As you can see, unemployment reaches incredible heights, okay? So let's take a look at one point in time, if you look right here, by 1933, 25% of the workforce is unemployed, which means 1 out of every 4 people is unemployed. One out of every 4 workers is unemployed. You know, before the national shutdown and the coronavirus, our unemployment rate was down below 5%. So I don't know what it is at right now, but 25% is a huge number of people out of work. So now if they're out of work, they don't get checks, they can't buy anything. That leads to more people out of work and so on. So we have to figure out a way to get people working again. Okay, this is a homeless camp in Brooklyn, New York. All right, and what you can see is what happened to these people is because they had no jobs, it was difficult for them to pay their rent or their mortgages on their homes, so they had to find a place to live. So they would find an empty lot and they'd build a shanty town out of materials they found on the street. So you can see all these homes that are being built on this vacant lot. All right, these homes eventually, these homeless camps would eventually be called Hoovervilles, but this was throughout America. You can find photographic evidence of these kind of shanty towns where people were forced to live. So now you have people who are unemployed, and now they're also homeless. All right. So what we want you to do is take a look at 63 left on the Schoology site, and you will look at 3 charts and answer some questions regarding the charts. All right, so 63 left is where you should go now after you've watched the screencast. As a result, this is a picture from Brooklyn of a homeless encampment, right? These are people who were unemployed. Now they're going to be homeless, all right? And they are going to build these little shanty towns with any kind of construction debris they can find. So homelessness is a huge problem. One of the things you're not going to be able to pay for is your rent or your mortgage. All right, that's a big bill that you have every month. Well, if you don't have any job, you can't do it, and that's the first thing. You're out. You're evicted. So you have all these people living in, and you can see this is pretty extensive. It goes all the way back here. So this is in Brooklyn. All right, so I screwed this up.